more formally. And gentleman is Gavin Ramsey-Paul, Senior Legal for Counter Trafficking out of the Ministry of National Security. So, very important people who have taken their time to come and share information with us, because they too see how important this Model UN is. So our featured speaker today, Alana Wheeler, is a graduate of the Bishop Anstey Girls High School. Bishop's Girls? One Bishop's Girl? So I guess that makes Alana an old Hilaria.
Not old.
Yeah, I always have to say that because my wife is an old Hilaria as well. I always tease her with the, stressing the old part. Alana is also a graduate of the University of the West Indies Management Studies Program and UWI Institute of International Relations. In 2008, she received a foreign Fulbright scholarship to pursue a Master of Arts degree in National Security Studies at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. And this is in Washington, D.C. Ms. Wheeler has worked in the field of national security for almost 20 years. In 2011-2012, she was the national coordinator for UNDP's first Caribbean Human Development Report on Citizen Security and made significant contributions to Trinidad and Tobago's first Human Development Atlas. Both publications are now used as reference tools by academics and public officials throughout the region. She also developed and implemented local anti-corruption initiatives with civil society organizations under the umbrella of Transparency International. In 2013, Ms. Wheeler assisted the University of the Southern Caribbean in developing a national security and intelligence studies program at the diploma and master's level. This program enrolled its first group of students for the academic year 2017-2018. In March of 2013, Ms. Wheeler was appointed the Deputy Director, Counter Trafficking Unit, and held this position until she was appointed the Director, CTU, in April 2016. Among other duties, Ms. Wheeler developed and implemented the public awareness campaign against trafficking in persons and drafted a concept note for the provision of suitable housing for victims of human trafficking. Ms. Wheeler has presented at local, regional, and international conferences and fora, including those hosted by the International Monetary Fund, Interpol Global Conference, Organization of American States, Crime Stoppers International, CARICOM Impact, University of Trinidad and Tobago, and the University of Southern Caribbean. Other areas of research include terrorism and counterterrorism, energy and security, cybersecurity, information warfare, and intelligence research and analysis. Clearly, from this bio, there is no better person than to present what we are about to hear today.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having us this morning. And I will just introduce Mr. Ramsey-Paul, Gavin Ramsey-Paul. He is the Senior Legal Officer. Right, it's always good to have your lawyer with you. So, budding lawyers and stuff, you can always liaise with Gavin after, and he's just here really to lend any kind of support with respect to any questions you may have on laws and legislation. I would just like to thank the Rotary Club for having the counter-trafficking unit and inviting us to be part of the project this year, and for choosing the topic of human trafficking. As you know, the government resources are very limited, and whereas we would have loved to provide and lend support financially, we weren't able to do that, so we are here in person, and we are lending to the Rotary whatever technical support that you would require to really be able to present at the MUN 2018 forum and the debate that will be taking place, I think it's in March of this year. All right, so we are here as a unit to support you, the students, and to support your research. feel free to contact us. Contact me directly if you require any assistance or further information. Okay, so I have a lot of information to share, and I'm hoping that I will be allowed committed time, to share all the information, and so that you will really be in a better position to defend your position at the presentation. So I'm going to ask for the lights to come off the front lights. Right, perfect. We're going to be looking at a lot of videos, so it will not be a boring lecture. Okay. So, see how easy it is to get caught? And you know, we always hear myths and stories that persons who are trafficked are usually persons who are not intelligent, they're poor, right? Those are some myths we hear about traffic victims, yes or no? Alright. So we see how easy it is for a child with his parents right there to be lured into trafficking. So I think we need the lights. Are you right? Great. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the United Nations. Just for info, the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons is recognized by the UN on the 30th of July every year. And the Ministry of National Security, we do some small recognition of the day via a press release or media release. If perchance after this project, you might be interested in doing something more to recognize the day this year, it's a good idea, and it's something that you can discuss and the Rotary Club can discuss. Right? Just to talk a bit about what is human trafficking, why is it such a big issue now, and you know, there's drug trafficking, there's guns and arms trafficking, there are all these types of trafficking, and what's the big deal about human trafficking now? Well, back in the year 2000, the United Nations General Assembly passed a convention against the transnational organized crime. They call it the UNTOC or UNTOC. Now, out of that convention, they developed 3 protocols called the Palermo Protocols. And I know with your great research skills, you will go and look up what these 3 protocols are. But the 3 protocols, one is to deal with trafficking in persons, the second one deals with the smuggling of migrants, and the third one deals with the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms. And out of these 3 protocols, several countries signed on to and ratified them. So this is good to check up online and see, depending on the country you're assigned to, which country has signed and ratified the UN protocol. So you'll see on the table the UN TIP protocol. TIP means trafficking in persons. You'll see the ILO Convention 105, ILO Convention 182. All those deal with trafficking in persons, labor, and forced labor, sexual exploitation. So you would see where the X's are is where that country would have signed and ratified each protocol. Since we are in Trinidad, we can look and see what Trinidad has done. So for Trinidad and Tobago, we just ignore the tier placement section. That's a whole controversial right there. So Trinidad and Tobago, the UN protocol, we signed it, we ratified it. We signed the ILO Convention 105, we signed the ILO Convention 182, right? Now what does that mean when a country signs and ratifies a convention? It then means that you are obligated internationally to abide by the rules of that convention. So we have countries like, for example, Venezuela signed on to all, right? But Venezuela has been in breach of many of these protocols, right? So this is why you'd find it here, UN placing sanctions against Venezuela and stuff because they've been in breach of those protocols. What it also obligates the country to do is the country now has to develop domestic legislation or national legislation that is in line with the protocol. So when you read trafficking in persons legislation for the different countries, and you could search for them online, you would see many of them line up with the Palermo Protocol that deals with trafficking in persons. And what I would suggest you do is you download the Palermo Protocol that deals with trafficking in persons for your country, and also download the country's domestic legislation. So for Trinidad and Tobago, our legislation is called the Trafficking in Persons Act, Chapter 1210. You can get it online on the Parliament channel, Parliament website, or on the Legal Affairs website. And the purpose of every country has a TIPS. The countries that have TIPS Act, they usually refer to as TIPS Act, TIPS Prevention and Protection Act, or something like that, but it always has TIPS in it, right? And their legislation will give effect to the UN protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, supplementing the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. So you will see that little paragraph at the beginning of each country's legislation that would have, each country that would have signed and ratified the UN. So we're going to look at a short video on what trafficking in persons is.
Slavery was practiced for millennia, from ancient times to transatlantic slave trade and slavery within the colonies. In the 18th century, the strong abolitionist movement started, which called for the abolition of slavery. In the 19th century, slavery was abolished in Europe. This included the British Empire, where the Slavery Abolition Act was enacted in 1833. In the 20th century, an international treaty called the Slavery Convention 1926 was created, prohibiting the practice of slavery. In 1948, the first international human rights instrument, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was adopted. It states that all human beings are born equal in dignity and rights, and it prohibits slavery in all its forms. Although slavery is legally prohibited, it continues in the 21st century. Trafficking in human beings, or THB, is a form of modern slavery. It is a crime which also has a strong human rights dimension. In short, it involves the recruitment of the victim and their transportation to another state or within the same state for the purposes of exploitation. THB is defined in the protocol to the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. Trafficking involves three elements: the act, the means, and the purpose. THB is a process that involves several stages and several perpetrators. The act. Firstly, a person is recruited. The trafficker can be a recruitment agency representative who promises an attractive and well-paid job to the person, whilst knowing that the person will be exploited. However, this act can also be done by a person who may have already known the victim. It is not uncommon for a victim to be recruited by a neighbor, a friend of a friend, or even a family member. Following that, a person is transported to another place in the country or transferred across state borders to another country. The means. Deception is an important part of the process of trafficking. A person may be told that they are going to work abroad, for example, in agricultural work, in a factory, or as an au pair. Very often, the victim believes that they will receive a fair remuneration for their work. Traffickers establish control over their victims. Victims are often subjected to threats, physical and sexual violence, and degrading treatment. Many have their identification documents taken away to prevent them from leaving the country. The purpose. One of the key purposes of THB is sexual exploitation, mainly of women and children. However, people are trafficked for other types of exploitation too. For example, the victims may be trafficked for agricultural work, forced domestic labor, cultivation of cannabis, forced marriage, organ transplants, or begging. Trafficking happens worldwide every year. Victims of trafficking may not always be visible, but they are present everywhere. For example, they may be on the same flight as you, or may be working in a hotel where you are staying. If you suspect that slavery is happening near you, you should call the police.
Okay, so that's human trafficking 101. So we're going to get a little bit into what the video showed us just a little while ago. There's something in trafficking that they call the push and the pull factors. The push factors, very simple, what would cause an individual to leave where they are and to go somewhere else? The pull factors, what would attract an individual to that location? And it's simple, how many of us would have had family that migrated to New York or the US or London? Right, correct. So what would have been the reason for their migration? They're migrating for low wages?
Well, because of the country they're in, low wages are so
right, so they're migrating for better wages. Why else do people migrate? Better standard of living. Why else? Education. Right. Family, get married to a foreigner and you migrate. Right, so we see, so these are the reasons why persons will be pushed out of their current location to another location. And how do persons choose where they migrate to? We look for somewhere that has better jobs, better economy, probably has other nationals from your country in that location, so you have a network that can already take you in, right? So when we talk about human trafficking, we're talking about persons being pushed to one place or being pulled to somewhere. So the reasons for causing someone to leave their location would be their salaries aren't all that hot, you get better salaries. For example, nurses and doctors are better paid in some countries than in other countries. We have the agricultural program with Canada, where there are persons from Trinidad that go up to Canada for a period of time and they work in the agricultural industry and their wages are much better. Persons leave because of war and political conflict. We see what's happening in Venezuela. A lot of Venezuelans are leaving and going to several countries in the region. We see it in Syria. We see it in other parts of the world. Opportunities for women. There are some countries where women are treated as second-class or third-class citizens, and they would prefer to leave and go to a country where women have better rights or more equal rights. We know of this student from, is it Pakistan, the Pakistani girl that was shot because she could not pursue education. She left and she went somewhere else. And many of the Asian countries you find, women who are educated, they tend to leave those countries and go to countries where they can be accepted as a female advancing themselves. Persons leave for famine and food shortages, and we see that in the case of the Libyans. I suggest you read up on that. That's very much in the CNN news with respect to the sale of Libyan slaves or Libyan persons. So they leave, and the Libyans are trying to leave to cross the border. I don't know which country they're trying to cross. And they end up being exploited, kidnapped, and sold as slaves. Right? What attracts persons to a country? The country has better education. The country has a better healthcare system. Wages are higher. And you find that there are other nationality. So if the country has a large Chinese community or a large East Indian community, for example, when Trinidad brought in the indentured laborers from India, you find that that would have caused more persons to be attracted here. And if there's a favorable political system, in other words, there's no persecution, and you know there are favorable things in the system that would favor that nationality. So we saw in the video the act, the means, the purpose, 3 elements of human trafficking. But what exactly are those elements? The act is what is done to the person, or what is done. The means is how it is done to them, and the purpose is why. So we see in the act, the person must be recruited, transported, transferred, received, and harbored. The transportation and transfer may not necessarily be across borders. It can be internally or domestic. The how, by force, and that force can be psychological force or physical force. Deception, coercion, and coercion again can be physical or psychological. Abduction or kidnapping, fraud, abuse of power, and this is where they may use their law enforcement or public officers' contacts, right, to sort of pressure the person or oblige the person to comply. Abuse of a position of vulnerability, that means the person who's being trafficked is vulnerable in some way, and vulnerability isn't necessarily just poverty. Vulnerability can be that there is a need in that person's life. The need could be for love. The need could be for attention. The need could be for material things. The need could be for money. The need could be for education. Right? So persons are vulnerable for different reasons. Payment or receipt of a benefit to person with control of another. So they tell you that you have a debt to pay back. So you're offered a free ticket, a free trip to go somewhere, and they tell you, well, when you come and you start to work, you can pay me back so much every month. And over a period of time, the debt keeps, instead of the debt reducing, the debt increases every month. And that's a form of control or bondage. And of course, threats. The purpose is always for exploitation, right? And the exploitation can happen in many different ways. It's not just sex. You can have persons forced to transport drugs, forced to transport illegal arms and ammunition, and the organ trafficking and all the other areas. But I want to look at the abduction. You know, we always hear these rumors that all these kidnappings and missing persons, so there's trafficking, right? But when we look at the definition of trafficking, we see that abduction is just one element. So if a person is kidnapped or a person is missing, from what you see here, does it mean that they have been trafficked? Yes or no? All right, good. So we will hear you, since you're more educated on it now, when you hear your peers saying, all these children missing and all these people kidnapped, oh my gosh, they trafficked, people not doing anything about it. We go back to that. Was there recruitment? Was there an act? And what was the purpose of their being kidnapped or abducted? Some people are abducted because the drug deal gone sour. Some people are abducted because they want money from the family. Some people are abducted just because. That has absolutely nothing to do with human trafficking. Right? So it's important that we understand that distinction. Child pornography, I wanted to highlight that because that has been in the local news over the past week. And just to let you know, child pornography is a form of human trafficking or child trafficking. Right, so when we talk about trafficking in children, the middle column is irrelevant. Right, so for a child to be trafficked, all you need is the act and the means. So for example, you cannot force a child cannot consent to have sex, for example. So once a child is found being sexually exploited, that is considered child sex trafficking. So the case we had recently over the past week, depending on what comes out of that investigation, it can be also, in addition to child pornography, child sex trafficking. When you go into a different country legislation, you can look to see how they define child pornography and how they define child sex trafficking. So these are the different types of human trafficking all over the world. We have child soldiers. That happens more frequently in the African countries and also in the recruitment of children to fight for terrorist fighting. Forced begging. We do see children in our streets sometimes begging. The question is, are they being forced or coerced by anyone to do that? And who actually gets the benefit from the funds that they beg for? Sexual exploitation, we're familiar with that. Forced marriage, yes, it does occur. I know of it occurring in cases like in ISIS and the terrorist groups. They force minors or children to be married, right, to service the men, the fighters. Selling children. I don't know how many of you would have heard of the movie Soul or seen the film Soul, which was showing, I think, in Movie Town. But in the Asian countries, oftentimes parents sell their children because they need the money and they aren't able to take care of them. And they sell them sometimes knowing that they are going to be working at a brothel, or they sell them sometimes not knowing, but the children end up working at brothels, in sweatshops, and in labor, agriculture, farming, all these different areas. Removal of organs, we're familiar with that. Forced labor, and that can be in any industry. So these are all the types of trafficking that we have. So how are persons recruited or groomed? Can you all see the right stand here? Alright, so social media, we know about that. Gangs and peer pressure. False love, and I want to tell you that it's very true. That is actually a very common way that girls are recruited for the sex trade or the sexual exploitation. And we know about the pimps. Pimps oftentimes are boyfriends of the girls, so they become the girls, or I should say the boy too, because we have women trafficking boys and stuff. So you find that the male or the female showers the individual with gifts, showers them with nice things, takes them out, and wins them over. And that person becomes the individual's lover, and then eventually they start to ask them to do favors, like, you know, having sex with their friends, having sex with other persons. But by that time, you would have become so hooked on this person and so committed to them that you feel emotionally obligated to please them. Right? And I want to ask how many in the room have been in love and what it's like. Right? I want to ask that. But for those of you who have been in love, you would know what it feels like, and you always want to please the person that you're in love with. Right? So, employment opportunities, of course. We're looking for a job. Someone the other day contacted me and they said that they got a phone call for a job interview, and the job interview was going to be at a hotel. Right? So, I want you to be very cautious of responding to, first of all, classified ads that just have a cell number on it, because it's always good to identify the person who is interviewing you with a physical location, right? And it would be very odd if somebody is interviewing you and all you have is a cell number, and they tell you to meet them at a very odd location. Ads that are looking for persons for modeling, or a lot of times they look for the Carrot girls and the Heineken girls and stuff, and sometimes it actually ends up not being that, it ends up being something else. And so be cautious of those interviews where you're called to go strange places for the interview. What we would suggest is that you take someone with you, an adult, and depending on where it is, if you decide to go, that you have someone there with you, and you always be accountable to someone for where you are. A lot of times young people run off and they go for the interview and you don't tell mommy or daddy where you're going, and then you end up in trouble or you end up missing. And that has actually happened to a few persons that we have interacted with. Thankfully, in some of the cases, they were able to find the young person. So be very cautious of employment, especially also employment opportunities where they tell you, we'll pay for your airfare to come for the interview, we'll sponsor you your accommodation, There's training, and the training is just for 5 days in whatever country it is. And it's not a legitimate organization. You're not sure where you're going, who you're going to, anything. Be very cautious of those things. There are a lot of opportunities out there for young people, and it's always good to check with an adult or check with the authorities before you decide to run off and do things. Same with education also. And of course, money and gifts. You know, we like the latest iPad, the latest iPhone. It's iPhone 7 or 8 now. 10 is here. I never even had an iPhone. So we like the latest, right? So, and persons who love to exploit people or take advantage of people, they know what we like, right? They kind of study us, They study us for a while, and they get to know a little bit about us, and they kind of look for where the opening is. So, whereas they may be really targeting you, and they realize they can't get to you because you're difficult to get to, they will get to your best friend, or the person that you hang out with often, and they will find out things about you, and find a way to get to you. Traffickers are very smart. They're not stupid at all. They're very, very smart. In fact, they're smarter than most of us, and they know how to lure and to trick. So we want to talk a bit about grooming. And when you look at the country legislations, look to see what they define as grooming. Sexual grooming, which is a criminal offense in Trinidad under our Children's Act, is where you gain the trust of a child or a person who takes care of the child for the purpose of sexual activity with that child. Right? And that is just in the area of sexual activity. Grooming is a part of the trafficking process. In the video, we would have seen where they spoke about deception, right? And use of force and all these different things. The trafficker usually grooms his victim before he goes in for the kill, if you want to see.
Go, Sona! I come in and don't give me no attitude there.
You have Shiana manners, boy. I wish I had your touch, boy.
You have to groom them. First, you have to target them, scope them out, see if they have low self-esteem, family problems, you know? Then you move in and gain their trust.
I like your glasses.
After that, you feel a need. Some of them like nice things like fancy phones, hairdos, clothes, food. It have ones who only looking for somebody to care and listen to their problems. You feel it? What's important though? You have to isolate them from the people. Let them believe it's all about you
Forget
and them.
I care about you.
Then you get through.
Nice, nice.
Look one right there. Chatting now.
A message from the counter-trafficking unit of the Ministry of National Security.
So let me ask a question. How many of us get fooled by boyfriends and girlfriends before? You put up your hand. But we get groomed, right? For a boyfriend, a fellow who checking you out, or a girl that's checking you out, they grooming you, before they go in. Just say. Right. So, how do traffickers control their victims? We ask the question, but this person so stupid, why didn't they just run away or walk away and call the authorities? Many times we have let me ask the question again. Boyfriend or girlfriend, and your friends will tell you, girl, you're stupid, get out of the relationship, leave him. And you say, you find all kind of reasons why he's nice to you, he does this for you, it's only this problem I have with him, so I will stick it out, right? He's treating me good, it's just when he slapped me a few times. But we telling ourselves, but you real stupid. Why those persons don't leave? When you just stay by you, you kind of had a friend who was in it. Why persons don't leave relationships that are not healthy? Right, they psychologically, very good, they psychologically abuse or force or coerce, these are words you'll hear in trafficking, right, to stay in the relationship. What are some of the other reasons?
Some people are codependent. and can't be by themselves.
Yes, very good. Codependent and cannot be by themselves. What else? Yes. Oh gosh, well, you can come and lecture up here, man. That's the norm, and everything you say in there is things we have experienced with actual victims of trafficking. And I'll give you an example. Persons who have grown up in a domestic violence situation. You saw your parents abuse each other, or one parent abuse the other. You become an adult, and you get into relationships, romantic relationships. And it becomes normal for you to be abused, because that's what you grew up in. And there are some cultures that are that way, right? And we have had victims that way, where they don't even realize that they are a victim, because they see nothing wrong with how they've been treated, right, in relationships. We see it oftentimes also in some cultures or families with sexual abuse, where it is the norm for the uncle to interfere with the niece or nephew. It's the norm for the stepfather or stepmother to interfere with the child. It's the norm for the cousins to interfere with each other, right? Very normal. But normal doesn't necessarily make it right. There are some cultures also where it is normal to work, to live where you work, and we see that a lot in the Chinese culture. They live where they work, and they work more than 12 hours a day, more than the 40-hour week, and they're not compensated for the additional hours. That's normal in the Chinese culture, but it's not necessarily right or legal, right? So these are some of the ways that traffickers control their victims. What are the reasons? Yes, correct. They believe they can't do better. And that's what happens. Whatever they may go back to is worse than what they're in now. So a lot of times they just stay and they stick it through. And when we look at what is happening in Venezuela, I can tell you there was a time we had taken some of them to the grocery to go shopping. And you walk through Massey stores or you walk through wherever, True Value, and everything is on the shelf. So we come across toilet paper on the shelf. And the young lady runs up to the toilet paper section and hugs the toilet paper. It was heartbreaking to see that. And we throw away toilet paper here, right? Throw it on the ground, throw it all over, right? She ran up the toilet paper and hugged it. Why? There's no toilet paper in Venezuela. Sanitary pads for the women, none. Pampers and diapers for babies, none. Rice, none. Basic food does not exist. So you are telling somebody who has left that and come here, and they end up in a brothel or they end up somewhere sleeping in some very bad conditions, and you tell them, girl, leave. Leave and go where? Leave and go where? The trafficker tells them, if you go to the police or you go to the authorities, they're going to deport you. That means you're going back. No toilet paper, no rice, no Pampers, nothing. So I better stay here and keep my mouth shut until I can do better. Right? So any other reasons? Yes.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
Is where the person being held hostage over a period of time forms a connection or a type of bond to the captor.
Perfect. You all heard that? Say it please for those in the back to hear.
Stockholm syndrome, which is where the person being held hostage forms a bond or connection to their captor.
Right? And that is a typical trafficking situation. Even after we have rescued some victims, they still ask the question, so how is so-and-so going, referring to the trafficker? How are they going? What's happening with them? Months after, they're still asking, what's happening with the trafficker? Right? Sometimes they may not even want to give up the trafficker in a statement because Stockholm syndrome, the person helped them out. The person helped them out of a worse situation and was helping their family and their relatives. So still they feel a sense of obligation and indebted to that person for helping them, even though they were beating them. And I go back, how many of you have friends or boyfriend or girlfriend where it is not healthy, but you're still in the relationship? Your friend tell you, get out, leave him. You're still in the relationship. taking all your money every week. You have to carry her movie tongue or carry her to the mall to buy this. You're still in the relationship. She had an ex-boyfriend, so you're still in the relationship. Right? So, you could end up being trafficked. Right? So the traffickers also isolate victims, physically isolate them. And sometimes you find they have them locked in apartments or houses where they don't have the key to come out themselves. It's highly fenced, high walls and fencing. And sometimes if you pass by the known brothels, you will see that they tend to have high walls, barbed wire. The girls aren't free to go in and out as they please. The isolation also occurs by way of a language barrier. Right? If you're in a country and you don't speak the language in that country, the only person you know is the person who has you there or who is trafficking you. You are isolated in some way. They're often escorted and chaperoned wherever they go. And a lot of times you see them move in groups. So you might see 5 or 6 in KFC or in the grocery and stuff, and you see somebody who seems to be controlling the girls, right? Those are signs of possibly trafficking. And I mean, I have witnessed it myself in the groceries and in the mall. Every day, sometimes even on the university campus here, you may see it, right? They walk about and you see a few people together, and there seems to be one person who's the spokesperson for the group, or who seems to be controlling everything, or who the girls seem to be kind of dependent on or leaning on. All those are signs. They're in an unfamiliar environment, most times in a different country, different language. If it's within the country, it could be that you've been moved to another part of your country that you really don't know anyone, or you're not familiar with the environment. And this is typical with holding your travel documents. Although traffickers have gotten smart, as I said, and they realize that the authorities are onto this, but oftentimes, if the person is crossing borders, they will take the passport or the visa or whatever they have, and they tell you, well, look, your country, this country not safe, people are steal things and stuff, so I will keep your passport here in my safe. Or I will keep my passport. I'll keep your passport for you in case you lose it. But let me just say, your passport belongs to you. Your passport is the property of the country that issued that passport, and it is your responsibility. If I take your passport and I say I'm going to organize something for it for you, well, this is besides clearance and stuff, right? But somebody else takes your passport and they say I'm organizing something for you, and when you get it back, you find it's tampered. You're responsible for that. You can be charged for having a tampered passport, not the person who tampered it, because they are not the owner, you are the owner, and you are responsible. And if you talk to any immigration officer, they will tell you that, right? We have had victims who have had tampered passports, and they would have undergone investigation to be charged, but because they are a victim of trafficking, they would be able to present that as a defense. And how can a passport be tampered? They can take a legitimate stamp and write up in the stamp, and the person who writes up in the stamp is not an immigration officer, right? They can take a false stamp or fraudulent stamp and stamp it in the passport. They could tear a page. If you tear a page out of a passport, it's tampered with, it's no good. If you cut it in some way, it's tampered with, it's no good. And that's why when you get new passports, they always cut the corners, so that it's not a valid passport anymore. So your travel document is important. Your visas also are important. A visa, which is normally for us a stamp in the passport, can also be tampered with, right? It makes the visa invalid and it makes the passport document invalid. So when you're traveling in all the UN projects, when you start working for the UN, you'll be mindful of those things when you're dealing with your travel documents. Of course, a lot of times the girls are drugged, they're forced to take drugs and alcohol. A lot of times they take it themselves so that it can numb the pain, right, or numb the experience. When you talk to girls who have to work in brothels every night, sometimes they have to service at least 10 or 11 clients per night, and they work 5 days a week, let's say 6. There's no Monday to Friday, sorry, it's Saturday, Sunday, almost every day sometimes they work. And these are regular prostitutes and also persons that are trafficked. They have to work every night, they have to service clients every night. And now I have to say clients because clients can be male or female or child, or client is anybody now, right? So they're required to service these number of persons, and you can just imagine if somebody's being forced to do that, you must find a way to cope with that, right? If you know of anyone that has been raped, that rape experience may have been once, and the trauma that that rape victim experiences from one rape experience, it takes them years to recover. A victim of trafficking who is sexually exploited is raped every time they have to service a client. So you're talking about being raped 10 times every day over a period of weeks or months. Some way they have to cope with it, through drugs or through alcohol. You manipulate their fares through immigration status. Oftentimes the trafficker will say, I'll organize your work permit for you. I'll organize an extension for you. Let me get your passport. So the person continues to work in the establishment, whether it's a grocery or wherever the places they work in. And number one, they've overstayed their time in the country. So let's say you land at the airport, the immigration gives you 1 month or 3 months to stay in the country, but 3 months have passed, the employer has the passport, and you assume that he's sorting out your papers. But he waits until your 3 months have passed, and then he comes back to you and he says, I didn't get it organized, you know. So now what? You're illegal. We see what's going on in a particular country, right? How they're dealing with people who have overstayed, right? So you're illegal now. You're hiding from the authorities, right? Because if they catch you, they're going to deport you. And I can tell you a deportation order on an individual never goes away. It's permanently in your record, right? Unless for some reason, miraculously, you get a pardon from that country, it's permanently, it's there. You can never go back to that country, and it is also on your travel record. So a deportation is not something that you would ever like to experience. So when he tells you that you're illegal, so who are you going to go to? You're going to go to CTU, you're going to immigration, you're going to the police station. Who are you going to when you already overstayed your time? Right? So the trafficker controls them that way. Language barrier, we spoke about that. The person will be dependent only on the trafficker to communicate. And of course, fear of reprisal to their family members, because oftentimes, as we saw in the video, victims are recruited by persons they know. And when we say persons they know, it could be a cousin, somebody in the village who was able to connect you to the person wherever you're being trafficked. It could be a parent, right? It could be someone that you know. So the trafficker knows your family, the trafficker knows where you live, the trafficker knows your children, right? The trafficker knows your spouse, your parents, everybody, and they oftentimes use that. When you look at some cultures like the Chinese culture, that is quite predominant in that culture, because the Chinese nationals that move around to different countries, there is often an obligation to send money. Well, first of all, they pay the person in the country, and they send money back to their family in China. But the trafficker is in touch, or the network, I should say, is in touch with the family back home. So when you try to help them on this end, there is a fear that there could be repercussions back home. So they may come for help, and then they withdraw because they receive a threat that says, brother, sister, auntie, uncle, child, back off, right? And that's very real in every country. Fear of a depreciated social status. It's embarrassing for anyone to say that they have been duped. Nobody likes to admit that I was duped, I was deceived. They make a fool of me. It's embarrassing to admit that. And so oftentimes victims are embarrassed to let their family back home know that they are in the situation that they are in. And let's just think of it. Let me see by show of hands, how many of you have relatives that have gone to New York or London for a better life? Well, that's practically the whole room. Right, okay. I won't ask you to show hands here. But some of those relatives may not be doing so well. Right? May or may not. They're struggling where they are. Right? Some of them might be homeless. Not saying that for here. But they won't tell you that. They won't tell you that because it's embarrassing. I left Trinidad to go to New York, to go to England, to go to Canada for a better life. And they may still probably be trying to send barrels every so often, send back money for the family and stuff. But it might stop, you know. And then you might get a story about why it stopped. But if it's not going so well for them there, you are the last person that will know. Because as far as you know, they're having a better life there. Worse yet, if they're now illegal, right? And I have somebody who had a relative who was actually deported back to Trinidad from the US, and no family member knew about it. None. They just knew she disappeared, and she was missing in action for a few months, and then they heard that she was deported. And we'll hear some more stories like that happening, right, with persons coming back. I know of persons who have actually left to come back before they were deported, because again, you don't want a deportation order on your name. So it is embarrassing to know you've been out there for 4 years, 5 years, 4 months, 5 months, and nothing happening, right? So, and we spoke about false love and promises. So tell me, who are traffickers? Who are traffickers? Anybody? Gosh, I could skip this slide then. Anybody can be a trafficker. Most times, women recruit women for obvious reasons. A woman will trust a woman. Believe it or not, women also exploit women. And there's a term, excuse me for the language, it's called bottom bitch. That is the female that would have been in the sex trade for a while, and she got promoted now to grooming the other girls. So she's now the bottom bitch, because she has girls or young women working under her. Excuse the language, but that is a term that they refer to in the sex trade. So yes, your relatives can traffic you. Your classmate, the person sitting right next to you, can traffic you. Boyfriend or girlfriend, because you don't want to give them up. Realize I touched some sensitive spots there. you know the Rotary committee and stuff. You know, we were all your age once, right? We all want your age, you know. We all sat where you're sitting now. So you can't fool us, right? We know the drill. So Facebook and social media, you can be trafficked that way. And I know like Facebook has been really trying to do a lot to warn persons about meeting persons online and all of that, all the dating websites and everything. But I always say a friend of your friend is not necessarily a friend. A friend of your friend of your friend is not necessarily a friend. So we like to friend people on Facebook, and then when we look in to see, oh, that is so-and-so friend, click. Right? All that person wants is to get onto your page to mind your business. They ain't really your friend. Right? So stop friending friends of friends and friends of friends. And friend only a friend.
Yes, girl. Online here with this weirdo named Larry. I get to know them now. Let's take a selfie. You're looking good, boy. I put it online.
Hey, I thought you say you went to the beach with your parents.
Who's you?
It's me, Larry, from online.
So you know, so I hearing things like, oh, she doted and all of that and thing, but you know, okay, if it's not Facebook, what else you have? Snapchat, Instagram, we have WhatsApp, Twitter, right? You know, we like to put our feelings out there, right? So I am depressed. Oh, I broke up with my boyfriend yesterday and it was horrible. And then you put a picture on. Oh, I gave up my ring to whatever. You know, we like to put our feelings out there, not so? Well, I guess I'm the only person. But we love to post how we feel on social networks. But you know, people looking at it and they realize, oh, I'm so depressed I didn't go to graduation yesterday. Or my mother pissed me off yesterday. Or this, and you know, we put everything out there. So who do you think reading those posts? Not just your friends, you know. It's Larry. Right? And Larry looking to study you to see who is the next person he could target. Because Larry is already a friend. So he reading your page.
Get on the phone. What you doing taking them kind of pictures? I'll tell mommy. And I'll tell her you invaded my privacy. Privacy? When you send those pics, you lose all privacy. It's like setting up a billboard with your naked pics for the world to see. Those pictures are for my boyfriend's eyes only, and he'll never do that to me. Yes, he can, or one of his friends or family. Or someone can steal his phones. Sending naked pics can open you up to embarrassment for you, your family, and friends. You can be harassed by bullies. Your pics can be uploaded to websites and seen by everybody, even the wrong people, sex offenders. It can also affect you getting a good job in the future. Once those pictures go out, you can never get them back. Okay, I'll tell my boyfriend to delete them, and I'll delete these. I'm glad I have a smart little sister. I'm still telling mommy.
Yeah, so tell me your thoughts on that video. True or not true? Wow. Okay. That video actually got over 500,000 views on Facebook within a week. Right? But I'll tell you how that video came about. Because the PSAs that we have done, we've done it out of true stories or true situations. About a couple of years ago, there was a high school, a mixed male and female high school. And the police went into the school because a fight broke out in the school. So when they went in, they contacted our unit and our officers went across to find out what was happening. So we were able to pull out about 3 or 4 girls, Form 3 students. Form 3 is what age, 15? Any 15? No, you're 16 and up, right? But some of them would have been 16. So around the 16-year-olds in the room here. And when we started to talk to these girls, one of the girls had an older boyfriend, and they call him a Tita man. That's an old term, or still even? So she had a Tita man boyfriend, and this boyfriend used to buy her nice things and stuff. She came from a home situation where she lived with her father, mother was absent, so you know she was looking for the attention, had this older boyfriend. And you know what the older boyfriend did? He used to take her to a house in Barataria, and she would pose, do nude pics and nude videos and stuff for him, and he used to have his friends do it too. So guess what he had her, the 15, 16-year-old, doing? Recruiting her classmates to be part of that, because she was getting paid to do this. So the older boyfriend wasn't just a boyfriend. So she recruited a few of her Form 3 classmates, and they started doing this thing, doing videos and doing pictures and stuff. And what happened was, the boyfriend had given her the money to pay the other girls. She didn't pay them. So they found out she got money and they wouldn't pay. So what happened? All hell break loose, right? So they decide now they're going to post one of the videos on social media. The whole high school saw it, right? And somebody coming with a knife in the school to start fighting in the school. So that PSA we saw there is really not as far as we think it is. And when we got in, we realized the father wasn't aware that she was doing this, all these things. The parents of the other children were not aware that their children were doing this nude pictures and videos and stuff. And of course, by then, the whole school see you naked, right, with everything you have. And I can tell you, it's not a pleasant. Right? So, this is very real. You send it on a private message because that's between me and whoever and stuff. I can tell you, just don't take any nude pictures or videos. Just don't do it. Don't do it, don't do it. I mean, you're at the age where you shouldn't be doing it in the first place, but just don't do it because you never know where that could end up. Right? You just never know. There are ways to tap into cell phones now, tap into laptops. Once something is posted online or shared online by email or private message or whatever, it is permanently there. It cannot be removed. And in the next 5 years, when you want your job in the UN, and they do a background check on you, and they go online, background check now is Google, right? They Google you, and that picture or video of you comes up. It won't be pleasant, right? So, victims, this is how victims of trafficking are affected. Spiritually, emotionally, socially, physically, culturally, and cognitively. And that's a whole psychological thing. I'm not a psychologist, but if you want to explore that as part of your debate, that is one area you can look at. We refer to it as trauma, and there is also something called secondary trauma, right, or vicarious trauma that affects persons who interact with victims of trafficking. And that would be, for example, like myself, senior legal, the police officers, the investigators, social workers, anybody that interacts with a victim, even yourself, if you have the Rotary Club members, you may interact with victims of other types of crime, and we have to be mindful of secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. What does that mean? We take on the feelings, the emotions, all of that that's happening with the victim. It transfers to us, and we now take it on. And we become stressed, and we become traumatized, and we can't sleep at night, and it's not an easy thing, right, to take on that secondary trauma. So in the area of child trafficking, what are some signs to look for your classmates? I thought we'd do this so that you yourself also can be on the lookout for possible victims around you. They're frequently absent from school. They run away from home. There are bruises and physical trauma, withdrawn, and they're depressed. They're often not well fed, or sometimes even not well dressed for school. Boyfriend or girlfriend who is noticeably older and controlling. So there was a school we had gone to, a very prestigious school, and I have to say the prestigious schools have a lot of that going on. Boys and girls schools, really. There's a Benz pulling up, a BMW pulling up, you know it's not the child parent, or brother, or uncle, but always a fancy car pulling up to pick them up, right? And they're going somewhere. And I understand that there are older women that are targeting boys in prestigious schools in South. Naps, boys and girls, yes. South and South, Port of Spain, yes. They're all over. So you see an older boy or girl. And you know, you as a child, for those who are minors, if an adult is having sex with you, that adult is committing a crime. Whether you have consented or not, once you are under the age of 18 and you are having sex with an adult, that adult can be charged. Right? That's ammunition for you, you know. There's nothing like consensual sex for anybody under 18. Does not exist in law. Right? So the child has a sudden change in attention to personal hygiene, and they have coached or rehearsed responses or manner of speech. So So some other red flags. Most victims live and work in the space where they are being exploited. It happens with domestic workers. Domestic workers is more difficult to identify because, again, there is a codependency on the place they live. If they were to report it, they put themselves at risk, right? They live and work premises is well garrisoned, and we spoke about that. They have no control over anything really. And their health condition is not really well. And I can tell you, recently, most victims who are victims of sexual exploitation, they tend to have STDs, right? They tend to have very bad infections. They tend to suffer from migraine, lack of sleep, not being able to sleep at night because they've gotten accustomed to working in the night and sleeping in the day. And sometimes they have stomach conditions and colon conditions because of the lifestyle that they've had to endure. They're extremely tired, abnormal behavior. Some of them are suicidal. Some of them have psychological, mental issues. And they are fearful of very simple things. We had one victim that was forced to have sex under a pomerac tree. Yes. And when we were interviewing her, the interpreter in the interview innocently took out a pomerac to eat it. And that was the end of it. You'd swear she was having a nervous breakdown. Right? Because the pomerac reminded her. And that interpreter after that, she didn't want to have to work with victims after that. Because it was also traumatic for the interpreter to understand. So we see where these psychological, these things already affect us. They're given leftovers many times. We had a domestic servitude victim where she was fed, I think, crepes. And she was allowed to sleep in a corner in the kitchen. And she was given a plastic plate, plastic fork, plastic cup. She was told that she's not to eat any, no, she's working in the house, working in the house, living in the house, not from the country, and she was not allowed to eat any food from the fridge or drink anything from the fridge. Only the scraps after they ate food. And that is real. That's as real as we can get. They have visible injuries, and sometimes it can be bruises from being beaten. There was one female victim who had her monthlies. So when she got her monthlies, the trafficker told her she still had to work. She still had to service clients. So what they did is that they took cotton and they stuffed cotton up inside of her. And she had to service a few men. I think after the third client, she passed out, right? Because for the woman in the room, you would understand, right? She passed out, and they had to take out the cotton. The nights that she worked, they had to physically remove the cotton after she worked. But after about 2 nights or 3 nights or so, she could not continue anymore because she was now weak. She was hemorrhaging badly. And when we got her, she hemorrhaged for a few weeks or months after we got her. Because of that situation, she was suicidal. She attempted suicide several times because of the trauma that she experienced. And even up to when we would have repatriated her, she did not want her family back home to know what happened to her. The other girls who were with her, who were trafficked, they offered to work in place of her because the trafficker had to get his money. If you have 3 girls, you want 10 clients from each girl every night, so you calculated dollars and cents already. One girl can't function, somebody else have to compensate. So the other girls offered to work extra so that that other girl could have been able to stay home and rest herself until her monthlies had passed. Right? So, and that's as real as we can get. So they are not dressed adequately for the work they do. Well, besides prostitutes, we talk about persons who work on construction sites or work in other areas in farming. Oftentimes that they are not trained to work or qualified to work in those conditions. And of course, they don't have the relevant protective gear. I was just thinking back of a video I saw with some children in the mining industry in one of the where they dig for, I think it's some metal, a rare metal, and it's children, so they're barefoot, they go down deep into some caves and they dig and stuff, and they have absolutely no protective gear. So they do depend, very dependent. One of you mentioned codependency. That is a key factor or red flag in human trafficking. And oftentimes they are paid below minimum wage, right? Or they are paid nothing at all. And there are a couple brochures up here on what the minimum wage is in Trinidad. You can check in the particular country and see what the minimum wage is. Oftentimes NIS is not paid for them, right? And oftentimes they don't really have benefits from being an employee. But I can say is based on the ILO standards and the ILO convention, which you can look up. There is a convention, ILO Convention 39, I think, that deals with labor and labor trafficking. It was recently amended to include human trafficking, and every employee has rights. If that employee is an illegal migrant or irregular migrant, they still have rights, right? Your immigration status does not determine your rights as an employee. So the employer is still obligated to pay them NIS and health surcharge and all these other things. Is that a signal? Yeah. Fine. Okay. Right. All right. So I will send the other slides. The slides will go to you, so you can look up the other things. There is smuggling of migrants, which is one of the other protocols. You can also look at that. Smuggling of migrants is not the same as trafficking in persons, and there is a difference. One is a crime against the state, the other is a crime, a human rights violation. Okay, and just to show you, I don't know if you've ever seen this.
You guys, I feel like we gotta acknowledge my boy Alejandro, especially
Yes.
after these last few days.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Yes.
Alejandro.
Alejandro.
Salud.
¿Saben qué? Me siento bien con ustedes. Estas 2 semanas han sido inolvidables.
I have no idea what you just said.
Some shit about 2 weeks and how much fun it was.
Anyway, I prepared a speech. Del parte del grupo, that's us, here.
Inglés.
Woo! Thank God. Please. We would have been here all week. Anyway, all I was trying to say, Alejandro, is that the past 2 weeks have just been awesome, and I just want to thank you for everything. You know, I mean, you gave us all of this and asked for nothing in return.
I must stop you there.
Oh?
I do have a favor to ask.
For you, Alejandro, anything.
Okay. So how many saw that movie, Traffic? Right. So you know, it is a true story. Right. I wouldn't have time to get into it, but it is a true story. It is a film on trafficking. They were forced to swallow cocaine pellets and transport it overseas. There was false love, as you see, in it. Right. And he was able to win them over by giving them 2 weeks free in his beautiful mansion by the seaside with pool and everything. And what she said? For you, Alejandro, anything. So I end here. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Delegates, members of the Rotary Club of Central Port of Spain, like you, I feel so fortunate to have been here over the last hour or so, am I right? Yes. I saw you guys taking notes as well, lots and lots and lots of information. Alani Wheeler, thank you so much. Thank you so much. You know, and it's so much information. It's going to help us with our research for this year's resolution. Yes, it's really going to help us. I wanted to say if anybody's name is Larry, we didn't speak about you. Yeah. But thank you so much for enriching our lives. Yeah, it's good for our own personal lives as well. I think we've got that. Yeah, and just to say thank you, can we just show our appreciation? Please.
Right, wonderful. I hope you all will stay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. I think the next item on the agenda is picking of countries.
Just slide it off. Yeah, I don't think we need it now. Oh, hi. Realize I'm on video. I wanted to show you something online. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think so too.
Stop this thing. Sorry. You doing it or me to do it?
Well, what I'll no, I'll let the students come and pull.
Yeah, but it's just one.
If we use this,
Alright, so it's 2 lists, right?
Well, actually, I'm using that list to write the names. It's been paid here.
Okay, so we have. So we're basically doing 2. Right,
I didn't want to use these pairs.
Right, look, this is not the correct list?
No, not this is the correct list. You can use these.
Alright, well, so we don't need that sheet.
Well, I wanted to write the countries in, or we could probably write it on the side or somewhere.
Yeah, we'd have to double them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember I have another list.
Yeah, but she said that's wrong.
Yes.
I have different versions.
You included Venezuela and
Yes.
Libya, right?
Yeah.
I'll write the 2 names here. Just quick thing. So the third one here, C, it'll be C here. Because we have 3, we have 3 here. So that's Marie and C here. And then Holy Name Convent is 4 people. And this person paired with this person right here.
God. So this is not the same as that then?
No.
Alright.
Well, because of change,
Yeah.
So we use this list.
So we just have one other person. We have.
Will you just stay there and
exactly.
Yes.
You will have to.
I'm taking notes like a crazy person.
Sorry.
Right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
I will call the school and you let them pick and then tell me which country.
Yeah.
Alright guys, silence please.
okay,
Focus.
delegates.
So the way we're going to do this is we're going to call you alphabetically by school. 1 delegate will come up for each pair of delegates and you will select a country from the bowl. This is completely random. There is no rigging or Russian infiltration or anything like that. So the country that you pick is the country obviously you will represent in the Model UN. Eric, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so our first pair of delegates are from the Academy of Tertiary Studies.
My apologies.
Siobhan and Sangeeta. One of you, please come forward.
When you choose the country, just announce it. What the country is announcing with the most enthusiasm ever. Don't look inside here.
Yes.
Best country ever.
Best country ever.
Choose one, huh? Choose one. That's one. Let's go.
Oh my God, Australia!
Okay, the next pair are from the Academy as well. Calvin and Hope. One of you, please. Oh, they missed the first one. She's not here.
Yeah, so we only have him, Calvin.
She can't be in it if she's missed two.
Argentina.
All right, the next school is Arima Central. Teddy Ann and Ronaldo. Asja Boys San Fernando, Kobe and Kazim.
Come on down. Hot countries. Come get your fresh hot countries. Japan. Sit down.
Asja Girls Charlieville, Rebecca and Jemima. Asja Girls San Fernando, Emily and Meleno. Okay, so far?
Does anyone know who that is?
Bishop Anstey East Sixth Form, Angelo and Kyle.
No pressure at all. This is the entire country. India.
Bishop Anstey East Sixth Form, Renelle and Joshua. Bishop Anstey High, Dara and Faith.
South Korea.
Chaguanas North, Lachelle and Malika.
Woo!
Mexico.
Chaguanas North, Anesta and Gabriella.
Yeah, come on down. Woo!
Christy spelled like that. It's Christy, the blood of the body of Christ. Yeah.
Germany.
Corpus Christi College, Chrisana and Saraya. I'm going to speak to her.
Zimbabwe!
Christy, Janella, and Alia. A whole campaign list.
What marker? What country is that?
Brazil.
Royal Secondary, we have Misach and Nikita. Mishak, my apologies.
Come on, Mishak.
Mishak.
Okay, to the east, let's Gabriel
Hoover East Secondary, Gabrielle and Desiree. Gabriel. Sorry.
Come on. South Africa!
So then it's Adriana and who? All right, so we have from Couva East Secondary, Adriana Davis, who will be working with Rebecca from Polytechnic Sixth Form. Have you guys met yet?
Otherwise, should stand up so you can see.
Let's have two of you stand up, please. Right.
You guys did a great friend. Don't look inside there. Look at it.
Got Diana.
I'm sorry?
Yes, yes.
So they're not going to beat that. Right, okay. All right, now on to El Dorado, right? Yeah. Okay. El Dorado East, we have Kyle and Anupa. They came late as well.
What? Sorry.
Ghana. Five Rivers Secondary, Ariana and Princess. We had a lot of people come late today.
Yeah.
Really, we should just shut the door, not let them come in. It's very rude.
Peru.
Next week, when we have the Americans here. Hillview College, Dominic and Rudy.
Yeah, I got a big country.
Be the delegation of España, Spain.
Yeah. All right, Holy Faith Couva, Abia and Chelsea.
Thailand.
Thailand.
Right, so this is Aria and Samara, right? Okay, so Holy Name Convent, Aria and Samara.
Kenya.
Holy Name Convent, Shanice and Juen. June? How do you pronounce that? June? June? Je ne pas. Laramine Secondary, Valentina and Aisha. You managed to add some last night?
Malaysia!
Yeah.
Just make them up. What is that one that's from Nambia? Anybody getting Nambia? Okay. We have, sorry, I lost my place. Lakshmi Girls Hindu, Annalisa and Anuradha.
Choose this one right here.
Just one.
Mozambique.
Anuradha. Polytechnic Sixth Form, Azaria and Justin.
Colombia.
Right, these two are not here, right? Joshua and Gabriel.
Yes, they have some scuba cars and then they're working on.
Alright, so we'll have to leave them for now, right? Give them what's left. Okay.
If you want to pay them differently, like, one here, one here.
Unless they want to pull for them.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me, Marcus. Presentation, college should warn us. We're missing Joshua and Adriel today. Adriel's here? You didn't sign in? Well, we're not psychic. All right, so Adriel and Joshua. Adriel is here.
Oh.
It's the boys.
Yeah, this
What's up with that girl?
Joshua.
Cyprus.
Cyprus.
It sounds like Adriel from the girl.
Presentation, college should warn us, Edward and Franz.
Woo! Why only choosing 12,000 countries? Libya.
Libya. Providence Girls, Michaela and Christina.
Woo! Quorum delegates.
Queen's Royal College, Jedediah and Nickel.
Yeah.
Decorum trainers, decorum.
Somalia.
I don't even understand this one. I can't relate to these men.
It's going to be all day. We have to dance after every country. QRC, Ronaldo and Zach.
Just one.
The one to dig up is the one again, worst country.
Yeah.
Every when I went, I just went to pick up.
Greece!
Yeah! All these people in my block.
That's part of your legend, Marcus.
Yes.
That's part of your legend, Greece.
Yes, it is.
Greece.
So now, tell me what's happening here. This Ariel with Adriel. What's happening here? Oh, I see. So these two are together. Right. San Fernando Central, Adriel and Tamira.
Nigeria.
San Fernando West, Ruth and Dominic.
I realized it when you figure out what this is.
We'll have to teach them about posture as well.
Train that at the baby.
So Alana, those will be your delegates.
The boys Trinidad.
Decorum delegates!
San Fernando West, Amanda and Darius. Who's ready? Sheba Boys, Jonathan and Shemaiah. Shemaiah's not here, right? Okay.
Egypt. Yeah, Egypt is on somebody else. I would assume Egypt. I'm from Egypt.
Next.
Forum Marcus, yes, great. St Anthony's College, Jaden and Kashawn. Did I pronounce that right?
Correct you.
Oh.
Austria.
St Francois Girls College, Kezia and Kiara.
USA. Nobody wants USA this year.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun next week.
Decorum!
St. Joseph's Convent, St. Joseph, Maxine and Dijen. Is that how it's pronounced? Dijen. UK is still up for grabs. Yeah. Who's this person?
She's the front here.
No, I haven't done her yet.
Oh, with the one with
Okay, alright. So this is going to be a coloured in circle. And a coloured in circle.
she's by herself.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Alright, so we have a pairing from two different schools. From St. Joseph's Convent, St. Joseph, Gabriella Bonio is going to be working with Janique Simmons from Woodbrook Secondary. Can you both stand? Alright.
Yeah, the right is
Czech Republic!
Czech Republic!
This is the first ever Czech Republic. This is the first year I think I'm seeing Czech Republic.
Possibly.
Janique and Gabriella.
Thank you. I just want to say, though, it's very important that you learn how to pronounce your countries. It is not Thailand, it is Thailand. So for those of you that have countries that you're not familiar with and you need help in learning how to pronounce them, please do not be afraid to ask. Okay? St. Mary's College, Marlon and Emmanuel.
Cuba!
So we have another mixed pairing. Please stand from St. Mary's College, Dimitri Gopal, and from San Fernando Central, Zion Seeley. All right, lovely.
Canada.
Alright, settle down.
Swaha Hindu College, Celine and Sajida. Swaha Hindu College, Sarissa and Keon.
That's Swaha.
Why are they so depressed?
No way! No way!
Always easy.
When we finish the Trinidad students, then we go into these, yeah?
Select the others.
Yeah.
Just these with checks.
And then the remaining are doing for students.
Yeah, well, I don't have any remaining. We will choose countries for that. That's it.
When we stop to call a country, we should not be asking you to maintain silence. It's a short process, and faster we get through it.
Trillium International, Nicholas and Gabriella.
Oh, she's sick of it. To Gabriella's.
What we doing is this. Let's reuse this.
Right, so we have 9 bags. We had a 100 and this person dropped off day this morning, 7 o'clock.
Gotcha. We need to learn how to pronounce that properly, please.
The Americans pronounce it Iraq.
Yeah, we're not American. We're not Kardashians.
I honestly don't have to look at that. I can't.
Trillium, Selena, and Angel. Are they here?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I'm guessing that's Angel.
Who's Angel?
Barbados.
Selena. Yui Roytek, Samantha, and Shawnette.
Excited. Iran.
She said it correctly.
Yeah.
She said it correctly.
Samantha.
Yui Open Campus, Kiona and Deshawn. You know, the bowl could actually go to the delegates. I'd say sometimes. The bowl could go to the delegates. We still have to pick for all the foreign students.
So you're going to put them in one group?
It's rigged. We got the whole federation. You guys are going to make that.
I have to go through these now.
Decorum.
Yui Open Campus.
Marcus.
Oh, I see. We could have done that a bit late now.
Oh.
Yui Open Campus, San
I wanna see
Fernando,
them.
Jada and Peaches.
Peaches.
You know, by herself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Peaches to my peaches.
We have enough countries in the bowl.
Yeah.
Philippines.
Solange Gopal from UE. Solange, you're going to be a delegate on your own for now. Okay? And then if we do have the option to add somebody to work with you, we will. Sure, you can handle
Like
it.
Beyonce said, so loud.
So we have what, 99 now?
Yeah.
That is Sweden in place fashion.
United Arab.
Just Solange.
Vishnu Boys Hindu, Amir and Lavane. Lavane, is that right?
Oh, they are not here.
They're not
today.
here?
No.
Can we just pick for them?
Yeah, you want to pick for them?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to pick for them. United Kingdom.
You let them know, right?
Vishnu Boys, United Kingdom, right?
Waterloo Secondary, Rashmi and Arib.
Yeah, because this is.
And Lara, use this.
Is the right one?
Use this one.
Okay. All right, delegates.
Last.
We're now going to select for our regional participants, so that these will be the students coming from the other islands. So Alana, can we ask you to do the honors as our guest? So if you can select for the delegates from Guyana, please.
Oh, Syria.
Syria. delegates from St. Lucia.
Oh, man. One of them will get Venezuela.
Oh, let's.
Yep.
Oh. My block. And last, there's just one left.
And now our delegates from Barbados.
Barbados gets China.
China.
Rohan, you need it.
All right, you're not doing it this today. All right.
Okay. Okay. There are still. We've distributed all the countries for all the students who have registered. There is still the possibility of getting students from Tobago and from Suriname. In such a case, we will assign countries to them, additional countries to them. So all of you, you know your countries. For the delegates who choose Trinidad and Tobago, you have a resource right here. Before they leave, I would urge you to get their numbers, so you don't have to go too far.
And it's 5 to 12 in Colombia.
Aswad, lunch now? Yeah. Okay.
Ready?
Marcus, tell them to be placing blocks after lunch. We can't go to that now and sit there.
Very shortly, we will break for lunch. The usual protocol. But before we do that, I know the trainers want to have a few words with you all. So I'll turn you over to Aswad.
Hi guys. Well, good day. So we will be breaking for lunch, and when we get back, you all have selected your countries. Do you all remember what your homework was last week? Yes. What was your homework?
You have to teach them.
Somebody raise their hand. Down, somebody raise their hand and speak.
You gave your sons on vocabulars on our emails, and we had to fill those answers.
That was my homework. That was my homework.
Oh, right, to research what a block is. Somebody of you all research what a block was? Did you all really know?
So, I'm going to choose some of you. What is a block? No. What country are you? We're from Cuba? Alright, so what is a block, Cuba? Okay, that's a really rough sketch.
Yeah, let's get another one.
Yeah, let's get another answer. Yes, USA.
A group of countries in a similar geographical region with similar opinions on certain topics. Blocks typically go together and work together to create draft solutions.
Right. So, did everyone hear that?
Yes.
How? Did everyone hear?
Yes.
Okay, so now that you understand what a block is, when you come back after lunch, you will be sitting down in your blocks. So there's the Asian Pacific block, there's GULAC, which is the Americas, there is Europe, and there is Africa. So you'll be sitting in those 4 blocks. So that's it. That's all?
Hey, John, do my homework? Yes. Okay, we'll go through it last.
That's all right.
We could carry some pieces of water.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just gonna sub this.
Oh, you already break?
Yeah. I'm just gonna sub this stream, right?
No, don't exit out, just something.
Yes, please.